So this is part 2 of finding the KEQ, so the equilibrium constant. I'm going to put that up here. So we're finding the KEQ still. And in this question, I have everything at equilibrium because we know to find the KEQ, you need to know how much stuff, what's the concentration at equilibrium specifically, not initially or during, but at equilibrium. So the first thing I'm going to do is that I'm going to think about this. I'm going to say, okay, I know my KEQ can only have anything that's gaseous or aqueous. So I'm going to look at my chemical reaction and I'm going to say, okay, only this and this are gaseous. Nothing else is aqueous or gas. These two are solids. So these cannot be included in my KEQ. Okay, I know that now. The next part I'm going to think about is what's included in my KEQ. So my KEQ, we know, is your products divided by your reactants. Okay, that's simple. So then I'm going to write out that my KEQ is equal to my concentration of my products divided by the concentration of reactants. Now I know that as well. So the next part is just writing what my products are on top and what my reactants are on the bottom. I know that my product, so I only have one product because I can't include this because this is a solid. So I'm only going to write this one. So it's going to be H2O, the concentration of H2O, and that's the only thing I have on top. But if I can remember this, one thing we should remember is that your coefficient, so my coefficient right there, becomes my exponent in my KEQ. So this 4 right here is going to become an exponent in my KEQ. So now I have that as well. And it's all going to be divided by my reactants. And for reactants, I only have my H2. I'm not going to include this because this is a solid. So I have H2. Now my next thing is that I'm going to look at my coefficient and I'm going to make it the power in my KEQ. So this is going to become the exponent of 4 as well. So that's my KEQ equation now. The next part is just simple. I'm just going to sub in my values. So in the question, it gave me these values, but they don't matter because I can't include my solids in my KEQ. So I'm only looking at these two values that were given to me. Another thing we should keep note of is that in our KEQ, you can only use concentrations. So that's molarity, So I already have my concentrations. I don't need to calculate them. So I'm just going to sub in these values now. So for my H2O, I have 2.51 times 10 to the negative 3 molar. Don't worry about, you don't have to write that molar because we know that the KEQ has no units. So you don't have to write the units in your equation, but I always do. So that's to the power of 4. And it's divided by my concentration of H2, which is 0.501 molar. And that's to the power of 4. So the next part is just putting it into my calculator. So when I put it into my calculator, it's going to be, I'm going to use brackets, 2.51 to the exponent of times 10 to the negative 3 to the exponent of 4, which is going to give me 3.969126 times 10 to the negative 11. Don't round until you have your final answer. So now I have this, and then I'm going to go 0.501 to the exponent of 4, and I'm going to get 0.063001502. And don't worry about units. And if I divide these two numbers, I'm going to divide this, I'm going to get 6.3. Now we can round 0.498 times 10 to the negative 10. That's my KEQ value. So if I was going to keep track of sig figs, I would have 3 sig figs. So up to there. So my final answer is going to be 6.30 times 10 to the negative 10. And that's my KEQ. KEQ has no units, so that's just my final answer. So what did we do? We looked at our chemical reaction. We determined what was gaseous or aqueous. So that was step number 1. I'll write out the steps on the side. So the first step was determine gases and aqueous. I really don't know how to spell aqueous. I think that's right. But determine gases and aqueous. Write your KEQ equation. KEQ equation. So that's products and reactants. And then step number 3, write in what your products are, and their coefficients become exponents divided by your reactants, and their coefficients become the exponents. Oh, one thing we should have also done is that we should have indicated that this H2O is in a gaseous state, because H2O could also be a liquid, so because it's water. So whenever you have H2O, make sure you indicate that it's gaseous, because if you don't, it could be a liquid, and liquids are not included in your KEQ. So make sure you indicate that. Other than that, you just sub in your values, put it into the exponent of 4, divided by your other value to the exponent of 4. And then your final answer is 6.30 times 10 to the negative 10, and that's your KEQ.